One of the most mysterious events in all of A Song of Ice and Fire is the last scene of A Game of Thrones, in which Daenerys Targaryen brings dragons back after nearly 2 centuries of extinction, achieving what her ancestors tried to do for generations with no success. It's been nearly 3 decades since fans first read that scene, and to this day it is unclear what exactly happened that made Daenerys successful. Different theories and speculations are discussed to this day. When asked about this scene, George R.R. Martin said, "The whole point of the scene in A Game of Thrones when Daenerys hatches the dragons is that she makes the magic up as she goes along. She is someone who really might do anything. What did Dany do to make her ritual successful while others failed? What were the logistics of it all? Whose lives went into the dragons and how? Let's revisit this magical event together." The Doom was a cataclysm that befallen the great empire of Valyria that dominated the world for centuries. It is unknown what precisely caused it, but all of the knowledge and magic that the Valyrians cultivated was lost, together with most of their dragons. Everyone present in Valyria on that day perished, but 12 years before the catastrophe, the lesser house of the Targaryens fled their ancestral land and settled on Dragonstone after one of its members, Daenerys the Dreamer, had a prophetic dream about the destruction. Alongside the Velaryons and Celtigars, the Targaryens were the only Valyrians that survived the Doom, and the Targaryens were the only house whose dragons survived. The Targaryens united Westeros into a single entity with the help of said dragons and ruled it for a century. After that, a civil war between 2 rival claimants to the throne, Rhaenyra and Aegon, caused all of the dragons to go extinct. However, around a century and a half later, Daenerys brings the dragons back, turning stone into a living being. Like Daenerys the Dreamer, Dany seemed to have prophetic dreams related to dragons that eventually culminated in her gaining knowledge of what needs to be done in order to achieve this feat. Daenerys has her first dragon dream the night before she gets sold to Drogo. "There are no more dragons," Dany thought, staring at her brother, though she did not dare say it aloud. Yet that night she dreamt of one. Viserys was hurting her. She was naked, clumsy with fear. She ran from him, but her body seemed thick and ungainly. He struck her again. She stumbled and fell. "You woke the dragon," he screamed as he kicked her. "You woke the dragon! You woke the dragon!" Her thighs were slick with blood. She closed her eyes and whimpered. As if in answer, there was a hideous ripping sound and the cracking of some great fire. When she looked again, Viserys was gone. Great columns of flame rose all around, and in the midst of them was the dragon. It turned its great head slowly. When its molten eyes found hers, she woke, shaking and covered with a fine sheen of sweat. She had never been so afraid. Until the day of her wedding came at last. In this dream, she is afraid of the dragon. It's a nightmare that makes her terrified. Daenerys received dragon eggs as her wedding gift from Illyrio Mopatis. Magister Illyrio murmured a command, and 4 burly slaves hurried forward, bearing between them a great cedar chest bound in bronze. When she opened it, she found piles of the finest velvets and damasks the 3 cities could produce, and resting on top, nestled in the soft cloth, 3 huge eggs. Dany gasped. They were the most beautiful things she had ever seen, each different than the others, patterned in such rich colors that at first she thought they were crusted with jewels, and so large it took both of her hands to hold one. She lifted it delicately, expecting that it would be made of some fine porcelain or delicate enamel, or even blown glass, but it was much heavier than that, as if it were all of solid stone. The surface of the shell was covered with tiny scales, and as she turned the egg between her fingers, they shimmered like polished metal in the light of the setting sun. One egg was deep green, with burnished bronze flecks that came and went depending on how Dany turned it. Another was pale cream streaked with gold. The last was black as a midnight sea, yet alive with scarlet ripples and swirls. "What are they?" she asked, her voice hushed and full of wonder. "Dragon's eggs, from the Shadowlands beyond Ashai," said Magister Illyrio. The eons have turned them to stone, yet still they burn bright with beauty. I shall treasure them always. While Illyrio says that he got those stones from Ashai, with the release of Fire and Blood, a new theory of their origins emerged. Elissa Farman, Queen Rhaena's lover, stole 3 dragon eggs from Dragonstone and sold them to the Sea Lord of Braavos in order to finance her journeys. These eggs have probably been laid by Dreamfire, Rhaena's dragon. According to Grand Maester Bennifer, these eggs would not hatch if they are away from Dragonstone. They will instead turn into stone, which is another hint that these are indeed Dreamfire's eggs. There is some likelihood that the Sea Lord of Braavos passed the eggs further to Ashai, or that simply when A Game of Thrones was written, Elissa Farman and her plot did not yet exist in the writer's mind, and it was retconned to connect these 2 plot lines. House of the Dragon might perhaps confirm whether that is the case, because we will likely see Dreamfire in the following seasons. If the showrunners choose to base the design of Dreamfire on the dragons from the original series, it will be another huge hint. We've already seen a short glimpse of Dreamfire and there seems to be resemblance, though we need to wait for Season 2 for further confirmation. The dragon eggs remain in Dany's possession throughout all of the first book. Life in the Kalasar proves very difficult for her, to the point that she is suicidal, but there comes a moment when something changes. She has her second dragon dream. Yet when she slept that night, she dreamed the dragon dream again. Viserys was not in it this time. There was only her and the dragon. Its scales were black as night, wet and sleek with blood. Her blood, Dany sensed. Its eyes were pools of molten magma, and when it opened its mouth, the flame came roaring out in a hot jet. She could hear it singing to her. She opened her arms to the fire, embraced it, let it swallow her whole, let it cleanse her and temper her and scour her clean. She could feel her flesh sear and blacken and slot away, could feel her blood boil and turn to steam, and yet there was no pain. She felt strong and new and fierce. And the next day, strangely, she did not seem to hurt quite so much. It was as if the gods had heard her and taken pity. Even her handmaids noticed the change. Khaleesi, Jiqui said, "What is wrong? Are you sick?" "I was," she answered, standing over the dragon's eggs that Illyrio had given her when she wept. She touched one, the largest of the 3, running her hand lightly over the shelf. Black and scarlet, she thought, like the dragon in my dream. The stone felt strangely warm beneath her fingers. Or was she still dreaming? She pulled her hand back, nervously. From that hour onward, each day was easier than the one before it. These 2 dreams are polar opposites of one another. In the first one, Dany is afraid of the dragon, and in the second one, she is not. The fire that she is bathed in somewhat cleanses her and hardens her, like a sword put into fire. Dany mentions that the dragon is slicked with her blood, but this is not a bad connotation. It is almost as if it's a child fresh out of a mother's womb. After that dream, Dany seems to feel that the dragon eggs are warm, as if they were alive, and the dream and the dragon eggs' presence seem to make her stronger. It is also after that dream when Dany first stands up to Viserys. Right after this happens, she witnesses a strange illusion. As she let the door flap close behind her, Dany saw a finger of dusty red light reach out to touch her dragon's eggs across the tent. For an instant, 1,000 droplets of scarlet flame swam before her eyes. She blinked, and they were gone. Later, she asks her handmaids whether they know anything about dragons. Iri and Jiqui assert firmly that they are gone, but Doria shares an interesting story. A trader from Karth once told me that dragons came from the moon. He told me that moon was an egg, Khaleesi. Once there were 2 moons in the sky, but one wandered too close to the sun and cracked from the heat. 1,000 dragons poured forth and drank the fire of the sun. This is why dragons breathe flame. One day the other moon will kiss the sun too, and then it will crack and the dragons will return. The story about the sun and moon is significant here. Drogo and Daenerys call each other my sun and stars and moon of my life. Dany herself is associated with the moon, and it is in the context of Drogo's funeral pyre that the dragons are born. We will build upon it later, but for now, let's just keep this in mind. In the following chapters, Viserys and Daenerys have another argument, and afterwards, Dany asks for her dragon eggs. Iri fetched the egg with the deep green shell, bronze flecks shining amid its scales as she turned it in her small hands. Dany curled up on her side, pulling the sun-silk cloak across her and cradling the egg in the hollow between her swollen belly and small tender breasts. She liked to hold them. They were so beautiful, and sometimes just being close to them made her feel stronger, braver, as if somehow she was drawing strength from the stone dragons locked inside. She was lying there, holding the egg, when she felt the child move within her, as if he were reaching out, brother to brother, blood to blood. "You are the dragon," Dany whispered to him. "The true dragon, I know it, I know it." And she smiled and went to sleep dreaming of home. Just like Dany found strength in her second dragon dream, she finds strength in her dragon eggs. She feels almost as if Rhaego reaches out to what would later be Rhaegal, brother to brother, and it's significant that both the baby and the dragon are named after her oldest brother, Rhaegar. There is some ambiguity about who exactly she speaks to when she says, "You are the dragon." Does she speak to Rhaego or the egg that would later be Rhaegal? After a failed assassination attempt on Daenerys, she once again seeks strength in her dragon eggs, and once again, a curious situation happens. Her eyes went to the dragon's eggs, resting in the nest of dark velvet. The shifting lamplight limned their stony scales, and shimmering motes of jade and scarlet and gold swam in the air around them, like corpses around a king. Was it madness that seized her then, born of fear, or some strange wisdom buried in her blood? Dany could not have said. She heard her own voice saying, "Ser Jorah, light the brazier." "Khaleesi." The knight looked at her strangely. "It is so hot. Are you certain?" She had never been so certain. "Yes, I have a chill." "Light the brazier." He bowed. "As you command." When the coals were afire, Dany sent Ser Jorah from her. She had to be alone to do what she must do. "This is madness," she told herself as she lifted the black and scarlet egg from the velvet. "It will only crack and burn, and it's so beautiful. Ser Jorah will call me a fool if I ruin it. And yet... Cradling the egg with both hands, she carried it to the fire and pushed it down amongst the burning coals. The black scales seemed to glow as they drank the heat. Flames licked against the stone with small red tinges. Dany placed the other 2 eggs beside the black one in the fire. As she stepped back from the brazier, the breath trembled in her throat. She watched until the coals had turned to ashes. Drifting sparks floated up and out of the smoke hole. Heat shimmered in waves around the dragon's eggs. And that was all. "Your brother Rhaegar was the last dragon," Ser Jorah had said. Dany gazed at her eggs sadly. What had she expected? 1,000 years ago they had been alive, but now they were only pretty rocks. They could not make a dragon. A dragon was air and fire, living flesh, not dead stone. Here Dany realizes the first ingredient to wake the dragons, fire. The eggs seem to be alive when they are put near the fire, but that is all. There is one crucial component missing. Life. After a failed assassination attempt, Drogo decides to invite Westeros to take revenge. In order to finance this endeavor, he sacks the Lazaran village. It is then when Dany encounters Mirri Maz Duur, a god's wife and a witch, referred to as a Maegi. When Drogo gets injured, Mirri tends to his wounds, and Dany asks her to attend her during birth. Drogo's wound gets infected. There are 2 reasons why this might have happened. Either Mirri intentionally tampered with the wound or gave him instructions she knew he wouldn't follow, for example not drinking alcohol. It quickly becomes clear that Drogo's wound will kill him. Dany fears what will happen to her in such a case and decides to beg Mirri to save Drogo's life using magic. There is a spell. Her voice was quiet, scarcely more than a whisper. But it is hard, lady, and dark. Some would say that death is cleaner. I learned the way in Nashai, and paid dear for the lesson. My teacher was a blood mage from the Shadowlands. Dany went cold all over. Then you are truly a Maegi. Am I? Mirri Maz Duur smiled. Only a Maegi can save your rider now, Silver Lady. Is there no other way? No other. Khal Drogo gave a shuddering gasp. Do it, Dany blurted. She must not be afraid. She was the blood of the dragon. Save him. There is a price, the god's wife warned her. You will have gold, horses, whatever you like. It is not a matter of gold or horses. This is blood magic, lady. Only death may pay for life. Death? Dany wrapped her arms around herself protectively, rocked back and forth on her heels. My death. She told herself she would die for him if she must. She was the blood of the dragon. She would not be afraid. Her brother Rhaegar had died for the woman he loved. No, Mirri Maz Duur promised. Not your death, Khaleesi. Dany trembled with relief. Do it. The Maegi nodded solemnly. As you speak, so it shall be done. Call your servants. Khal Drogo breathed feebly as Rakharo and Quaro lowered him into the bath. No, he muttered. No, must ride. Once in the water, all its strength seemed to leak out of him. Bring his horse, Mirri Maz Duur commanded, and so it was done. Drogo led the great red stallion into the tent. When the animal caught the scent of death, he screamed and reared, rolling his eyes. It took 3 men to subdue him. "What do you mean to do?" Dany asked her. "We need the blood," Miri answered. "That is the way." The stallion kicked and reared as Rakaro, Quaro, and Ago pulled him close to the tap, where the calf floated like one already dead, pus and blood seeping from his wound to stain the bad waters. Miri Mazdur chanted words in a tongue that Dany did not know, and a knife appeared in her hand. Dany never saw where it came from. It looked old, hammered red bronze, leaf-shaped, its blade covered with ancient glyphs. The Maegi drew it across the stallion's throat, under the noble head, and the horse screamed and shuddered as the blood poured out of him in a red rush. He would have collapsed, but the men of the Khas held him up. "Strength of the mount, go into the rider." Miri sang as horse blood swirled into the waters of Drogo's bath. "Strength of the beast, go into the man." Drogo looked terrified as he struggled with the stallion's weight, afraid to touch the dead flesh, yet afraid to let go as well. Only a horse, Dany thought. If she could buy Drogo's life with the death of a horse, she would pay 1,000 times over. When they let the stallion fall, the bath was dark red, and nothing showed of Drogo but his face. Miri Mazdur had no use for the carcass. "Burn it," Dany told them. It was what they did, she knew. When a man died, his mount was killed and placed beneath him on the funeral pyre, to carry him to the Nightlands. The men of her Khas dragged the carcass from the tent. The blood had gone everywhere. Even the sand silk walls were spotted with red, and the rugs underfoot were black and wet. Braziers were lit. Miri Mazdur tossed red powder onto the coals. It gave the smoke a spicy scent, a pleasant enough smell, yet Eroe fled sobbing, and Dany was filled with fear. But she had gone too far to turn back now. She sent her handmaids away. "Go with them, Silver Lady," Miri Mazdur told her. "I will stay," Dany said. "The man took me under the stars and gave light to the child inside me. I will not leave him. You must. Once I begin to sing, no one must enter this tent. My song will wake powers old and dark. The deaf will dance here this night. No living man must look on them." Dany bowed her head, helpless. "No one will enter." She bent over the tap, over Drogo in his bath of blood, and kissed him lightly on the brow. "Bring him back to me," she whispered to Miri Mazdur before she fled. After Daenerys leaves the tent and the Dothraki learn what happened, the Dothraki men began fighting with Jorah and Dany's Khas. In the ensuing struggle, Carol, Koto, Koholo, and Hago die, and Dany's waters breaks as Miri continues her ritual. An arm went under her waist, and then Ser Jorah was lifting her off her feet. His face was sticky with blood, and Dany saw that half his ear was gone. She convulsed in his arms as the pain took her again, and heard the knights shouting for her handmaids to help him. "Are they all so afraid?" She knew the answer. Another pain grasped her, and Dany beat back a scream. It felt as if her son had a knife in each hand, as if he were hacking at her to cut his way out. "Doria, curse you!" Ser Jorah roared. "Come here, fetch the birthing women." "They will not come. They say she is accursed." "They will come, or I will have their heads." Doria wept. "They are gone, my lord." "The Maegi," someone else said. "Was that Ago? Take her to the Maegi." "No," Dany wanted to say. "No, not that, you mustn't." But when she opened her mouth, a long wail of pain escaped, and the sweat broke over her skin. What was wrong with them, couldn't they see? Inside the tent the shapes were dancing, circling the brazier and the bloody bath, dark against the sunsilk, and some did not look human. She glimpsed the shadow of a great wolf, and another like a man wretched in flames. "The lamp woman knows the secrets of the birthing bed," Iri said. "She said so, I heard her." "Yes," Doria agreed. "I heard her too." "No," she shouted, or perhaps she only thought it, for no whisper of sound escaped her lips. She was being carried. Her eyes opened to gaze up at the flat dead sky, black and bleak and starless. "Please no." The sound of Miri Mazdur's voice grew louder, until it filled the world. "The shapes," she screamed. "The dancers." Ser Jorah carried her inside the tent. Dany's next chapter starts with the third dragon dream, the most advanced and detailed one that finally allows her to piece everything together. Wings shadowed her favorite dreams. "You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" She was walking down a long hall beneath high stone arches. She could not look behind her, must not look behind her. There was a door ahead of her, tiny with distance, but even from afar she saw that it was painted red. She walked faster, and her bare feet left bloody footprints on the stone. "You don't want to wake the dragon, do you?" She saw sunlight on the Dothraki Sea, the living plain, rich with the smells of earth and death. Wind stirred the grasses, and they rippled like water. Drogo held her in strong arms. and his hand stroked her sex and opened her and walked the sweet wetness that was his alone, and the stars smiled down on them, stars in a daylight sky. Home, she whispered as he entered her and filled her with his seed. But suddenly the stars were gone, and across the blue sky swept the great wings, and the world took flame. Don't want to wake the dragon, do you? Ser Jorah's face was drawn and sorrowful. Rhaegar was the last dragon, he told her. He warmed translucent hands over a glowing brazier, where stone eggs smoldered red as coals. One moment he was there, and the next he was fading, his flesh colorless, less substantial than the wind. The last dragon, he whispered, thin as a wisp, and was gone. She felt the dark behind her, and the red doors seemed farther away than ever. Don't want to wake the dragon, do you? Viserys stood before her, screaming, The dragon does not beg, slut. You do not command the dragon. I am the dragon, and I will be crowned. The molten gold tricked down his face like wax, burning deep channels in his flesh. I am the dragon, and I will be crowned, he shrieked, and his fingers snapped like snakes, biting at her nipples, pinching, twisting, even as his eyes burst and ran like jelly down seared and blackened cheeks. Don't want to wake the dragon. The red door was so far ahead of her, and she could feel the icy breath behind, sweeping up on her. If it caught her, she would die a death that was more than death, howling forever alone in the darkness. She began to run. Don't want to wake the dragon. She could feel the heat inside her, a terrible burning in her womb. Her son was tall and proud, with Drogo's copper skin and her own silver gold hair, violet eyes shaped like almonds. And he smiled for her and began to lift his hand towards hers, but when he opened his mouth, the fire poured out. She saw his heart burning through his chest, and in an instant he was gone, consumed like a moth by a candle, turned to ash. She wept for her child, the promise of a sweet mouth on her breast, but her tears turned to steam as they touched her skin. Want to wake the dragon. Ghosts lined the hallway, dressed in the faded raiments of kings. In their hands were swords of pale fire. They had hair of silver, and hair of gold, and hair of platinum white, and their eyes were opal and amethyst, tourmaline and jade. Faster, they cried. Faster, faster. She raced, her feet melting the stone wherever they touched. Faster, the ghosts cried as one, and she screamed and threw herself forward. A great night of pain ripped down her back, and she felt her skin tear open and smelled the stench of burning blood and saw the shadow of wings. And Daenerys Targaryen flew. Wake the dragon. The door loomed before her, the red door. So close, the hall was a blur around her, the cold receding behind. And now the stone was gone, and she flew across the Dothraki sea, high and higher, the green rippling beneath, and all that lived and breathed fled in terror from the shadow of her wings. She could smell home, she could see it, there, just behind that door, green fields and great stone houses, and arms to keep her warm, there. She threw open the door, the dragon, and saw her brother Rhaegar, mounted on a stallion as black as his armor. Fire glimmered red through the narrow eye slit of his helm. The last dragon, Ser Jorah's voice whispered faintly. The last, the last. Dany lifted his polished black visor. The face within was her own. Several noteworthy things happened in that dream. At first, Dany is trying to escape from an icy breath to reach the red door, the door to the house that was her only true home. She fears that if the cold reaches her, something worse than death will happen to her. This seems to be a reference to the others. Something worse than death might be the enslavement to their army, to be a living corpse doing their bidding. Throughout this passage, you don't want to wake the dragon eventually turns into wake the dragon, and eventually the dragon. She sees Drogo, she sees Ser Jorah, saying that Rhaegar was the last dragon. She sees Viserys threatening her. She sees how Rhaegar would have looked had he lived. And then she sees old kings. The silver, gold, and platinum white hair seem to point towards Dany's Valyrian ancestors, but curiously not all of them have the iconic Valyrian purple eyes. One of them indeed has amethyst eyes, but the others have eyes of opal, tourmaline, and jade. So who are these people? It's possible that they are the rulers of the great empire of the Dawn, a civilization that dominated the world thousands of years before Valyria. What little we know about this empire is that it was ruled by someone named God on Earth, the only son of the Lion of Night and the Maiden Maid of Light. He passed his rule to his eldest son, the Pearl Emperor. Then the rulership went to the Jade Emperor, then to the Tourmaline Emperor, then to the Onyx Emperor, then to the Topaz Emperor, and then to the Opal Emperor. When the daughter of the Opal Emperor ascended to power as the Amethyst Empress, her envious brother killed her and proclaimed himself the Bloodstone Emperor. This betrayal caused the Long Night. The darkness ended when a great warrior rose to lead humanity into battle with the sword Lightbringer in his hand. The ghost Daenerys have swords of pale fire. Each of them wields Lightbringer. In Essos, the mythical hero wielding Lightbringer is usually referred to as Azor Ahai. Dany then feels wings ripping her back open and she flies, as if reborn as a dragon. Her vision is Ser Jorah once more saying that Rhaegar was the last dragon and Dany sees her brother, but when she leaves the visor, she sees her own face. Dany wakes up and tries to crawl to her dragon eggs, once again seeking strength in them. She loses consciousness again and wakes up once more. She asks for her dragon eggs and Miri brings her Viserion's egg. When she wakes up for the third time, she senses that something is moving inside the egg. Jiqui finally says that Rhaego was a stillborn, and Dany isn't surprised, for she knew what happened due to her dream. Dany goes to her other dragon eggs and feels their heat, but when she asks Jorah to confirm it, he says they are cold. Miri finally tells Dany what happened to her son and her husband. They say the child was... She waited, but Ser Jorah could not say it. His face grew dark with shame. He looked half a corpse himself. Monstrous, Miri Mazdur finished for him. The knight was a powerful man, yet Dany understood in that moment that the Maegi was stronger and crueler and infinitely more dangerous. Twisted, I drew him forth myself. He was scaled like a lizard, blind, with the stub of a tail and small leather wings like the wings of a bat. When I touched him, the flesh slowed off the bone, and inside he was full of grave worms and the stink of corruption. He had been dead for years. Darkness, Dany thought. The terrible darkness sweeping up behind to devour her. If she looked back, she was lost. My son was alive and strong when Ser Jorah carried me into this tent, she said. I could feel him kicking, fighting to be born. That might be as it may be, answered Miri Mazdur. Yet the creature that came forth from your womb was as I said. Death was in that tent, Khaleesi. Only shadows, Ser Jorah asked, but Dany could hear the doubt in his voice. I saw Maegi. I saw you, alone, dancing with the shadows. The grave casts long shadows, Iron Lord, Miri said. Long and dark, and in the end no light can hold them back. Ser Jorah killed her son, Dany knew. He had done what he did for love and loyalty, yet he had carried her into a place no living man should go and fed her baby to the darkness. He knew it too. The grey face, the hollow eyes, the limp. The shadows have touched you too, Ser Jorah, she told him. The knight made no reply. Then he turned to the god's wife. You warned me that only death could pay for life. I thought you meant the horse. No, Miri Mazdur said. That was a lie you told yourself. You knew the price. Had she? If I look back, I am lost. The price was paid, Dany said. The horse, Malchild, Quaro and Kotho, Hago and Koholo. The price was paid and paid and paid. She rose from her cushions. Where is Khal Drogo? Show him to him, god's wife, Maegi, blood mage, whatever you are. Show me Khal Drogo. Show me what I bought with my son's life. As you command, Khaleesi, the old woman said. Come, I will take you to him. This conversation and Dany's thoughts that Jorah killed Rhaego are used by some people to insist that Miri never wanted to harm Rhaego, that the ritual was botched because Jorah entered the tent. But just like Miri worked her way out of killing Drogo, she worked her way out to make sure that someone enters the tent. This was her plan all along. Miri knew that the Dothraki hate and fear magic and that they will fear and hate Dany for asking for her help. As such, she knew that Dany will have to enter the tent for the baby to be delivered. Besides, Miri ends up admitting to the deed not long after that and gives her reasons for that. He was lying on the bare red earth, staring up at the sun. A dozen blood flies had settled on his body, though he did not seem to feel them. Dany brushed them away and knelt beside him. His eyes were wide open, but did not see, and she knew at once that he was blind. When she whispered his name, he did not seem to hear. The wound on his breast was as healed as it would ever be, the scar that covered it, great and red and hideous. Why is he out there alone in the sun? She asked them. He seems to like the warmth, princess, Ser Jorah said. His eyes follow the sun, though he does not see it. He can walk after a fashion. He will go where you lead him, but no farther. He will eat if you put food in his mouth, drink if you dribble water on his lips. Then he kissed her sun and stars gently on the brow and stood to face Miri Mazdur. Your spells are costly, Maegi. He lives, said Miri Mazdur. You asked for life. You paid for life. This is not life, for one who was as Drogo was. His life was laughter, and meat roasting over a fire pit, and a horse between his legs. His life was an arak in his hand, and his bells ringing in his hair, as he rode to meet an enemy. His life was his blood riders, and me, and the son I was to give him. Mirri Maz Duur made no reply. When will he be as he was? Dany demanded. When the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, said Mirri Maz Duur. When the seas go dry and mountains blow in the wind like leaves. When your womb quickens again and you bear a living child. Then he will return. And not before. Dany gestured at Ser Jorah and the others. Leave us. I would speak with this Maegi alone. Mormont and the Dothraki withdrew. You knew, Dany said when they were gone. She ached, inside and out, but her fury gave her strength. You knew what I was buying, and you knew the price, and yet you let me pay it. It was wrong of them to bear my temple, the heavy flat-nosed woman said placidly. That angered the great shepherd. This was no god's work, Dany said coldly. If I look back, I am lost. You cheated me. You murdered my child within me. The stallion who mounts the word will bear no cities now. His Khalasar shall trample no nations into dust. I spoke for you, she said anguished. I saved you. Saved me. The Lazaran woman spat. 3 riders had taken me, not as a man takes a woman but from behind, as a dog takes a bitch. The 4th was in me when you rode past. How then did you save me? I saw my god's house burn, where I had healed good men beyond counting. My home they burned as well, and in the street I saw piles of heads. I saw the head of a baker who made my bread. I saw the head of a boy I had saved from dead-eye fever, only 3 moons past. I heard children crying and the riders drove them off with their whips. Tell me again what you saved. Your life. Mirri Maz Duur laughed cruelly. Look to your khal and see what life is worth, when all the rest is gone. Dany then euthanizes Drogo. The last chapter of A Game of Thrones is when the actual magic happens. Dany intends to burn Drogo on the pyre, per Dothraki tradition, but from the moment she begins, it's clear that this will not be a regular pyre. Bring me my eggs, Dany commanded her handmaids. Something in her voice made them run. Ser Jorah took her arm. My queen, Drogo will have no use for dragon's eggs in the Nightlands. Better to sell them in Asshai. Sell one and we will buy a ship to take us back to the Free Cities. Sell all 3 and you will be a wealthy woman all your days. They were not given to me to sell, Dany told him. She climbed the pyre herself to place the eggs around her sun and stars. The black beside his heart, under his arm, the green beside his head, his braid coiled around it, the cream and gold down between his legs. When she kissed him for the last time, Dany could taste the sweetness of the oil on his lips. As she climbed down off the pyre, she noticed Mirri Maz Duur watching her. You are mad, the god's wife said hoarsely. Is it so far from madness to wisdom? Dany asked. Ser Jorah, take this Maegi and bind her to the pyre. To the... My queen, no, hear me. Do as I say. Still he hesitated, until her anger flared. You swore to obey me, whatever might come. Rakarok help him. The god's wife did not cry out as they dragged her to Khal Drogo's pyre and staked her down amidst his treasures. Dany poured the oil over the woman's head herself. I thank you, Mirri Maz Duur, for the lessons you have taught me. You will not hear me scream, Mirri responded as the oil dripped from her hair and soaked her clothing. I will, Dany said. But it is not your screams I want, only your life. I remember what you told me. Only death can pay for life. Mirri Maz Duur opened her mouth, but made no reply. As she stepped away, Dany saw the contempt was gone from the Maegi's flat black eyes. In its place was something that might have been fear. Then there was nothing to be done but watch the sun and look for the first star. When the red comet appears in the sky, it is a clear sign for Dany to start the funeral and she lights up the pyre. Mirri boasted that she will not scream and start singing the same magical song she did in the tent, but then she screams in pain. Dany notes that she sensed the truth a while ago and sees the vision of Drogo living for the Nightlands. She hears the first crack and thinks of the mantra Mirri told her. Only death can pay for life. Then there is a second crack and a third crack. Dany survives the pyre and 3 dragons are born to her. Remember the legend Doria told Dany in one of her first chapters. He told me that the moon was an egg, Khaleesi. Once there were 2 moons in the sky, but one wandered too close to the sun and cracked from the heat. 1,000 dragons poured forth, and drank the fire of the sun. That is why dragons breathe flame. One day the other moon will kiss the sun too, and then it will crack, and the dragons will return. This legend is metaphorically repeated in the pyre. Dany, the moon of Drogon's life, wandered too close to Drogo, her sun and stars. The moon kissed the sun again, and dragons returned. Dany and Drogo also repeat another legend, that of Azor Ahai. When the long night came, Azor Ahai tempered his sword in the heart of his wife, Nessa Nessa, and forged Lightbringer. A very similar situation happens here. Dany sacrifices the life of Drogo to forge a metaphorical sword that will be useful during the fight against the others. It's no coincidence that Dany places Drogon's axe on Drogo's heart, just like Azor Ahai plunges his sword into Nessa Nessa's heart. But that does not explain the mantra Mirri Maz Duur used. Only death can pay for life. On the pyre, only one life was lost, that of Mirri. Drogo was already dead and Dany survived. What are the mechanics of it all? Shouldn't it be 3 lives for each dragon, especially since Drogo is significant as Nessa Nessa? We can assume that Dany at least partially replicates the ritual she saw Mirri do, knowing that Rhaego's life was paid for Drogo's life. But she considers this no true life at all, only vegetation, and we later see that her dragons are certainly not in a vegetative state. When Dany has her fever dream right before she learns of Rhaego's death, she sees 4 people, Drogo, Rhaego, Viserys, and finally Rhaegar, who turns out to be her own self. In the next book, Dany names her dragons after them, Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal. And here is the answer to the question whose lives were used. Drogo, Viserys, and Rhaegar or Rhaego, who reincarnated in Dany's dragons. It's been a while since Drogo, Rhaego, and Viserys died, even more since Rhaegar died. But if we take an assumption that the life force that went into dragons does not have an expiration date, then it would make sense. What about Mirri though? Was she simply executed by a vengeful Dany? We see that she sings the same song she did in the tent. What was she trying to do? Was she trying to cast some spell on herself that would make her survive, but failed? Let's once more look back on the ritual Mirri performs when she is about to save Drogo. At first she kills Drogo's horse, which mistakenly leads Dany to believe that this is the price. As the name suggests, blood magic requires blood, so it is not a stretch to assume that blood is what needed to kickstart the ritual. Blood as in death. But Drogo comes back vegetative. Could it be that the horse was indeed the price, blood to kickstart the ritual, while Rhaego was the life force that was transferred to Drogo? Let's apply this to the pyre. In that case, since only Mirri died on the pyre, her blood was what was used to kickstart the ritual. Her a living person with cognitive abilities, not a horse. Hence the dragons turned out to not be vegetative. If, say, a horse was used, like in the case of Drogo, then perhaps that would be the case. But the life of a human being was used instead. And the souls of Rhaegar or Rhaego, Drogo and Viserys went into those stones, just like Rhaego's life went to Drogo. But because only a horse was used, Drogo was not restored to his former self. In a way, Mirri indeed did not lie when she said that the price is a horse. It was part of the price to start the ritual. Perhaps if a real person was used to kickstart the ritual, Drogo would return as his old self. Dany replicated Mirri's ritual 1-to-1 and added one aspect that was not present before: fire. The recipe to wake dragon from stone was life, fire, and blood. There is another important aspect that is brought up in the following books. King's blood has special magical properties. Melisandre tries to burn Edric Storm, who was Robert's blood, to wake stone dragons present in Dragonstone in the form of sculptures. In her dream, Dany sees 4 people who had King's blood. Drogo was, in a way, a king of his Khalasar. Rhaegar, as a son of King Aerys, had King's blood. Similarly, Viserys was a son of King Aerys and styled himself as Viserys III. Rhaego, as Drogo's son, had his King's blood. Not to mention that Dany also has the King's blood. Her blood and her miraculous survival are probably related to the ritual succeeding. There are more hints about these events in A Clash of Kings when Daenerys visits the House of the Undying and hears numerous prophecies. Then phantoms shivered to the murk, images in indigo. Viserys screamed as the molten gold ran down his cheeks and filled his mouth. A tall lord with copper skin and silver gold hair stood beneath the banner of a fiery stallion, a burning city behind him. Rubies flew like drops of blood from the chest of a dying prince, and he sank to his knees in the water, and with his last breath murmured a woman's name: Mother of Dragons, Daughter of Death. Drogo does not appear in these visions, but Rhaego, Rhaegar, and Viserys do, alongside the moniker Mother of Dragons and Daughter of Death. Mother of Dragons is used in reference to Dany birthing dragons, while Daughter of Death is used in the context of the deaths that happened so that Dany could wake the dragons: Rhaegar or Rhaego, Viserys, and Drogo. This is another hint that their lives went into the stone and made them alive, making her a mother of dragons. These prophecies are clearly related to demonikers, since the next one tells about a blue-eyed king who casts no shadow and a clothed dragon, followed by Mother of Dragons, Slayer of Lies. Lies line here are that of Aegon being a real Targaryen and Stannis being Azor Ahai. In the same scene, there are other visions related to the ritual. Shadows wield and dance inside a tent, boneless and terrible. Clearly the memory of Miri dancing with the shadows. And another one. Miri Mazdur shrieked in the flames, a dragon bursting from her brow, confirming that Miri's life was a necessary component. After dragons went extinct, numerous Targaryens tried but failed to bring them back. The most notable example of these attempts was that of Aegon V, which resulted in the tragedy in Summerhall. Like Dany, Egg had dragon dreams and it would seem like he got everything right. He had dragon eggs, king's blood, and fire. But something didn't quite work out. What did Egg miss that Daenerys didn't? We might find in the following books. I believe that the three lives used to wake dragons from stone are Rhaegar or Rhaego, Drogo and Viserys, with Miri's blood being used to kickstart the ritual. Just like in the case of Miri's ritual, Rhaego's life was used for Drogo and the blood of the horse was used to kickstart the ritual. One crucial ingredient was added to make the stones alive: fire. Therefore, the necessary components are blood, specifically king's blood, fire, and life. This is just one possible reading of this situation. There are many more theories regarding the logistics of these events. If you have your own speculations, feel free to point them out in the comments. In any case, thanks for watching. Remember that if you like my content, like, subscribe and share so that more people can see it. Make sure to click the notification button so that you never miss a new video.